The return of Obinna from Ajonkporo marks the beginning of a new chapter for Odeni village. The villagers sensed that the worst of the curse was behind them, yet they know also that the journey towards full restoration was not complete. The men had regained some of their vitality, and harmony was slowly returning, but there was still an air of caution, as if the village held its breath, waiting for the final piece of the puzzle to fall into place. With the guidance of Adugo and the elders, the village began to focus on rebuilding not just their physical lives, but the spiritual and communal bonds that had been strained. Rituals of gratitude were held at the river, offerings were made to Mmụọ, and the sweeping of the river bank became a daily act of devotion that everyone participated in, men and women alike. One afternoon, as Adugo was tending to her twins by the river, a young girl from the village, Chinwe, approached her with wide, anxious eyes. Chinwe was known for her intuition, often sensing things before they happened. Adugo noticed the worry etched on the girl's face and paused her work. "Nnem, what troubles you?" Adugo asked gently, sensing that something was amiss. Chinwe hesitated, glancing at the river before speaking. "I had a dream, Nne Adugo. The river was speaking to me. It said there is still a great trial coming. A choice must be made, one that will decide the fate of the community." Adugo felt a chill run down her spine. She had always believed in the power of dreams, especially those of someone like Chinwe, who seemed to have a foot in both the physical and spiritual worlds. "Tell me more, Chinwe," she urged, kneeling to be at the eye level with the girl. "In the dream," Chinwe continued, "there was a darkness rising from the river. It tried to cover the village, but then a light, so bright it hurt to look at, pushed it back. But the light didn't come from the river. It came from someone in the village, someone who had made a great sacrifice." Adugo's heart raced as she absorbed Chinwe's words. The trial was not yet over, and a sacrifice would be required to secure the village's future. She thanked Chinwe for sharing the dream and assured her that the elders would be informed. As Chinwe ran off to play, Adugo's mind was already turning over the possibilities, trying to decipher what the dream could mean. That evening, Adugo met with the elders to discuss the dream. The elders, though wise, were also concerned. They had seen many signs over the years, but the clarity of Chinwe's vision left them unsettled. It was clear that Mmụọ was not yet fully appeased, and that the village still had a debt to pay. Nze Okeke, the elders of the council, spoke up, his voice heavy with the weight of his years. "We have done much to restore balance, but it seems there is one final act needed, a sacrifice of great importance, perhaps one that only the river can reveal to us." The other elders murmured in agreement. It was decided that a special ceremony would be held to seek guidance from Mmụọ. The villagers would gather by the river at dawn, bringing offerings and prayers, in the hope that the Mermaid would reveal what was needed to fully lift the curse. As word of the ceremony spread, A sense of urgency took hold in the village. The people were afraid, but they were also determined. They had come too far to turn back now, and they were willing to do whatever was necessary to ensure the safety and prosperity of their home. The night before the ceremony, Obinna could not sleep. He had been deeply moved by Chinwe's dream, sensing that it was connected to his own journey. The thought of a sacrifice weighed heavily on his mind, and he found himself drawn to the river once again. In the quiet of the night, Obinna knelt by the river bank, the cool water lapping at his feet. He closed his eyes and spoke softly, hoping that Nneka would hear him. Great Spirit of the river, if there is anything more that I can do to atone for my sins, show me the way. I am ready to make whatever sacrifice is needed to protect my village. The river was silent at first, but then a soft breeze stirred the water's surface, creating gentle ripples that seemed to dance in the moonlight. Obinna felt a presence beside him, and when he opened his eyes, Nneka was there, her form shimmering in the darkness. "You have come a long way, Obinna," the Mermaid said, her voice filled with a calm that belied the gravity of her words. "But the final trial is near. A sacrifice will be needed, one that will test the very soul of Udeni." Obinna looked at her, fear and determination welling within him. "What must I do, Nneka? I am ready to make amends for all I have done." The mermaid's eyes softened, and she reached out to touch his shoulders. "The choice is not yours alone, Obinna. The entire village must come together to make this decision. But know this, the sacrifice will require great courage, and it will change the village forever." With those words, Nneka vanished, leaving Obinna alone with his thoughts. As the first lights of dawn crept over the horizon, Obinna knew that the time had come to face the final trial. He rose from the river bank, his resolve firm, and made his way back to the village to prepare for the ceremony that would determine the fate of Udeni. The villagers gathered at the river as the sun rose, their offerings in hand, their prayers on their lips. The elders led them in chants and rituals, their voices rising in unison as they called out to Nneka, beseeching her for guidance. The air was thick with anticipation, and a sense of unity filled the space as the entire community stood together, ready to face whatever was to come. Suddenly, the river began to glow with an outwardly light, and Nneka emerged from the water, her presence commanding and serene. The villagers fell silent as she looked over them, her gaze filled with both love and sorrow. "One among you must make a choice," Nneka said, her voice echoing in the stillness. "A sacrifice is needed to fully lift the curse and restore balance to Udeni. This sacrifice must come from the heart and be made with a pure spirit. It will require great strength, but it will bring peace to your village." The villagers exchanged anxious glances, unsure of who would be called upon. Obinna stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "Nneka, if it is my life that is required, I offer it freely. I have caused so much pain, and I wish to atone." The mermaid shook her head gently. "Obinna, your journey has been one of redemption, But this sacrifice is not yours alone to make. The village must decide together, for it is the unity and love of the community that will determine your fate. As the villagers began to discuss among themselves, Adugo stepped forward, her voice calm and steady. "We are all in this together," she said, looking at each of her fellow villagers. "The decision we make today will shape the future of Udeni. Let us choose wisely, with love and courage in our hearts." The villagers formed a circle, holding hands as they contemplated the weight of the decision before them. The air was thick with emotion, but there was also a sense of resolve. They knew that whatever choice they made, it would be made together as a community bound by love and tradition. The final trial was upon them, and the fate of Udeni hung in the balance. The days following the ritual at the river were marked by a profound shift in the atmosphere of Udeni village. The men, now humbled by their actions, took on the tasks they had once scorned. They worked side by side with the women, tending to the fields, fetching water, and caring for the children. The village that had once been divided by pride and jealousy was slowly beginning to heal. However, the curse was not completely lifted. The men of Udeni still found themselves lacking the strength and vitality they once possessed. Though they worked diligently, there was a lingering sense of unease that hung over the village. The women, while grateful for the change in their husbands, could not ignore the fact that something was still amiss. Adugo, who had become something of a leader among the women, continued her daily visit to the river. Her twins, a boy and a girl, were the pride of the village, and she took great care in fulfilling her promise to Nneka. Every morning, she would rise before dawn, gather her broom, and make her way to the river bank, where she would sweep and sing, her voice carrying on the gentle breeze. But Adugo was not without her worries. She knew that the village future still hung in the balance. The curse that had been placed upon the men was a reminder that their past actions could not be easily forgotten. The river, once a place of joy and blessings, now seemed to carry an undercurrent of tension. One evening, as Adugo sat by the river bank, she noticed a change in the water. The usually clear and sparkling river had taken on a darker hue, and the air around it felt heavy with a sense of foreboding. Concerned, she knelt by the water's edge and called out to Nneka. "Nneka, great spirit of the river, what troubles you?" Adugo asked, her voice filled with concern. "The men have begun to change their ways, and we have not forgotten our promise to you. What more must we do to restore your favor?" For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the water began to ripple, and Nneka appeared before Adugo, her expression grave. "Adugo, my faithful one," the mermaid began, her voice tinged with sadness. "The men have shown remorse, but the balance of the village is still fragile. The curse that binds them cannot be undone so easily. There is still a deep-seated darkness in Udeni that must be addressed." Adugo's heart sank. What must we do, Nneka? How can we restore the harmony that has been lost? Nneka's eyes seemed to pierce through Adugo's soul as she spoke. The curse was born from jealousy, pride, and a lack of respect for the sacred. To truly lift it, the men must not only atone for their actions, but must also confront the darkness within themselves. There is one among them who has not yet repented fully, whose heart remains clouded by resentment. Adugo's thoughts immediately turned to Obinna. Though he had led the men in the ritual of atonement, she had said that his repentance was not as complete as it should have been. There was still something unresolved within him, a bitterness that lingered despite its outward show of contrition. "Mmụọ Nneka," Adugo said slowly, "if Obinna is the one who harbors this darkness, how can we help him find the light? He has tried to make amends, but perhaps his heart is still burdened by the past." The mermaid nodded, her expression softening slightly. "You are wise, Adugo. Obinna's journey is far from over. He must confront the source of his bitterness and find a way to cleanse his soul. This will not be an easy task, and it cannot be done alone. The village must come together to support him, but in the end, it is Obinna who must choose to let go of the darkness." Adugo listened intently, understanding the gravity of the task ahead. "I will speak to him," she promised, "and I will gather the village. We will help him in any way we can." Mmụọ Nneka smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "The road to redemption is long and difficult, but it is not impossible. Remember, Adugo, that true change comes from within. Only when the hearts of all in Udeni are free from malice will the village be restored in its former glory." With that, the mermaid disappeared beneath the river, leaving Adugo alone with her thoughts, and the night descended upon Udeni. She made her way back to the village, her mind racing with the challenges they lay ahead. The next morning, Adugo called a meeting of the entire village. Men, women and children gathered in the central square, curious and anxious to hear what she had to say. Standing before them with her twins at her side, Adugo spoke of her conversation with Mmụọ Nneka and the tasks that lay before them. "We have all made mistakes," she began, her voice strong and steady, "but the curse that lingers over our village will not be lifted until we confront the darkness that remains. Obinna, we stand with you in this, but you must be willing to face the past and let go of the pain that has brought us to this point." The villagers murmured among themselves, glancing at Obinna, who stood at the edge of the crowd. His face was a mask of uncertainty, but there was also a glimmer of hope in his eyes. He knew that this was his moment of truth, the chance to finally free himself from the chains of his own making. As the villagers began to organize themselves, preparing for the journey that lay ahead, Adugo felt a sense of determination settle over her. The road to the redemption would be long, and the trials they would face would be many, but together, as a united community, they would find a way to lift the curse and restore the harmony that had once blessed their village. And so, with the support of the entire village, Obinna took the first steps on his path to redemption, knowing that the fate of Udeni rested not just in his hands, but in the hearts of all who called the village home. The journey was far from over, and the trials that awaited them were still shrouded in mystery, but the villagers of Udeni were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The villagers of Udeni stood by the river their hands clasped together in a cycle of unity. The soft glow of dawn bathed them in golden light as they prepared to make the most difficult decision of their lives. Mmụọ Nneka, the mermaid of the sacred river, watched them with a serene expression, waiting for their choice. Adugo, holding her twins close, spoke softly but firmly, her voice carrying the weight of a mother's love and a leader's wisdom. "We have all made sacrifices to restore peace to our village," she began, "but now we must make one final act of courage. Whatever we decide, it must be done with the knowledge that our strength lies in our unity." The villagers nodded in agreement, their faces reflecting a mix of determination and sorrow. Each person understood the gravity of the moment, and yet there was a shared sense of hope. Hope that the choice they made would not only lift the cause but bring lasting peace to Udeni. After a long silence, Obinna stepped forward once more. "If there must be a sacrifice," he said, his voice steady, "let it be something that strengthens us, something that reminds us of the power of community and love." Mmụọ Nneka's eyes sparkled with approval. "A wise choice, Obinna. But remember, the sacrifice must come from the heart of the village. What will you offer?" The villagers exchanged thoughtful glances, and then, one by one, they began to speak up, each offering something personal, something meaningful. "I will offer a portion of our harvest," said Nnadi, the village farmer. "Let the first fruits of our labor be dedicated to the river every season, a symbol of our gratitude and commitment." "I will teach the next generation the stories of our people," added Ozioma, the village storyteller. "Let our children learn the lessons of our past so that they may build a brighter future." "And I," Adugo said, stepping forward with her twins, "will offer the service of my children. They will grow up knowing the importance of the river and the mermaid's blessing. They will lead the rituals and keep the river clean, ensuring that the bond between our people and Mmụọ Nneka remains strong." As each person made their offering, Mmụọ Nneka's smile grew brighter. The river shimmered with approval, and the dark cloud that had hovered over the village for so long began to disperse. The villagers, standing together in unity and love, had made the right choice. They had chosen to sacrifice not a life but their time, their resources, and their love for one another. It was a sacrifice that strengthened the bonds of community and ensured the protection of Udeni for generations to come. Mmụọ Nneka nodded in approval, her voice filled with warmth. "You have chosen wisely, my children. The curse is lifted and balance is restored. Your village will prosper and the river will continue to bless you. Remember this day and the power of unity that you have shown. As long as you remain united and honor your commitment, Udeni will thrive." With those words, Mmụọ Nneka faded back into the river, leaving behind a sense of peace and fulfillment. The villagers, now filled with joy and relief, embraced one another, knowing that they had overcome the greatest trial of their lives. The village of Udeni would go on to flourish, its people united by the strength of their sacrifice and the love they shared. Moral lesson: the story of Udeni village teaches us the profound importance of unity love, and selflessness. When faced with challenges that threaten to tear us apart, it is not power or wealth that will save us, but the strength we find in coming together as a community. The true essence of sacrifice is not in the loss of life or material possession, but in the willingness to give of ourselves, our time, our love, and our commitment to each other. It is through this act of selflessness that we create a world where peace and prosperity can thrive.